Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, Satisfaction. Today's topic is Technical Interviews Part 2. I usually record my podcast in Kannada, but today I'm switching to English for this topic and audience. In the previous episode, I discussed basics of technical interviews and the three major areas of focus: communication skills, attitude, and technology experience that's relevant to the job. Have you ever felt your heart race before a big technical interview? You're not alone. In today's episode, we'll explore strategies to turn that nervous energy into confidence. And I'm going to further discuss some of the techniques with which you can handle the interview pressures, answer any tough questions, and how to end the interview with the confidence. Okay, let's get to it. You have a client interview that's scheduled and coming up. First thing you feel is your heart is pumping and mind is racing. That's perfectly normal. What many people miss is the interview preparation is a lifelong process. It's not a one and done approach. Whatever you've been working on so far, all of that can help. Therefore, there is no need to worry. When I say a client interview, I usually keep in mind that majority of the job seeking people are fresh graduates that are seeking employment through a third party consulting company at a reputable firm. And I'm also assuming many of you have come from different backgrounds and different countries that you're about to make a big entry into the US employment pool. You could be an outlier. Nevertheless, the techniques mentioned here are helpful for anyone that's seeking a technical position. First, let's talk about who can interview you at the other end of the table or at the client location. You likely encounter interviewers from diverse cultural and professional backgrounds. Therefore, speak clearly and focus on effective communication to bridge any gaps. These days, most interviews are online and sometimes it could be an in person interview as well. We'll focus on online interviews here and we can cover the in person interview related things later. Just to address your uneasiness, nervousness, and helplessness, ask yourself a question. Consider the worst case scenario here. You either secure the job or don't. Keeping this perspective can help alleviate your unnecessary stress. Also, let's look at the interview situation from the employer point of view. They usually interview 3 to 4 candidates per job position. Again, it depends on the supply and demand. You could be the first candidate or you could be the last candidate. Sometimes they already have a candidate in mind and this is just a namesake interview. Why am I bringing up all these things here? The main reason is I want you to focus on what's in your control and do every interview with the best of your abilities as if it is the dream job that you will pursue in the future. Once you have a job offer, you can always say no to it, but first get a job. And most importantly, don't stress on the parameters that's outside of your control. What interviewers like is how the candidate comes across. How are they speaking? Are they taking initiatives as they do this interview? Or are they just answering to the point and moving on? How is their body language, etc.? All of this matters. Assuming the interview is a video conference call, I always stress on trying the interview link at least 10 minutes before the scheduled time. If you have a Zoom link or a WebEx link, sometimes your computer may have to install the software or update the installed version. I suggest you arrive at the interviews 5 minutes before the start time. As you greet and say hello, look straight into the camera, not into the monitor. This eye contact method will certainly work in your favor. This is the time you also want to ask them, can they hear you well? The types of interviewers are like you should expect. In the USA, you should expect mixed bag of people. It could be Indians, Chinese, Caucasian, Black, African American, European. All of these interviewers are possible at any interview panel in the USA. Believe me, sometimes understanding the questions is equally difficult. And then mutually, they will also feel the same way when you answer the questions. It's very important for you to speak slowly, clearly, and using full sentences. If you have hard time understanding their question, you might as well repeat some of the key points of a question to confirm what exactly they're asking. But don't use this very often. Use it seldomly. Also have a notebook and a pen handy. Write down key points of the question, and in your answer, make sure you cover all parts of it. If it's a situation based question, like describe a situation when you did this, you should use the STAR method. The STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and response. For any situation based question, use your experience. Use something within the last year or two that's relevant to the job that you have done. Clearly state the situation. As part of this team, in this year and this time frame, I was presented with this situation, and what was the task, what was your action, and what was the result or response. So in a nutshell, situation is the problem statement. Task is what you were asked to do. Action is what that specific thing that you did, and lastly, what was the result. When you think of a situation of your choice, you should ask yourself a question, so what, at every stage. Then you'll get the clarification. You should not think of a situation at a job interview. You should have at least 4 to 5 situations ready in your mind and use them to address the question at hand. Practice your answers ahead of time. Record your own voice and hear them out. Speak authoritatively and have eye contact with the person or the panel looking straight into the camera. Have 4 to 5 situations in hand. Let them ask anything that they want to ask, but use the situation that you've already practiced and memorized. Be ready to go, and life will be perfect. And be ready to cover the STAR in as little as 3 minutes, or it could take as much as 10 minutes, depending on the situation. Sometimes they will probe to learn more. They may ask a follow-up question. That's perfectly normal. The language used in describing the STAR method is very crucial. You should be clear where to use we as a plural and where to use I as a single. I know everybody works in the context of a large team, but the interview here today is about you and what your specific contributions that you have done to the team or to the job, not the team contribution. Therefore, you should say, my task was, my role was, and so and so. Also, one thing I notice, sometimes the candidates are not ready to share their screens. I'd suggest be ready to share your computer screen. Whether you're using a Mac computer or Windows computer, have a separate desktop ready to be shared with an IDE. Like you can use Eclipse, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, NetBeans, or whatever that is. Have a clean desktop ready with a notepad and then also an IDE. So as in when they're asking questions, make a note of those questions and key things on the notepad that you're sharing with, and then swivel chair to the IDE and start writing the code if that's appropriate. Offer to the interviewer and say, hey, if you like, I can write the code for this, or I can write a method. When you do this, take full advantage of the features that's in an IDE, but stay away from using the tools like Copilot or Gemini. You don't want the interviewers to think something else. When the interviewer asks you a question, and you're not sure which method to use, or you may have multiple answers, mention both of the approaches and do a quick brainstorm of the advantages and disadvantages of both. For example, you may be thinking about whether to use if then else, or whether to use a case statement, or whether to use a dictionary for mapping or match statement. You can talk through these alternatives as and when you kind of answer the questions itself. Also, people sometimes they don't take advantage of how to conclude the interview. Somewhere along the line, you should have already mentioned your educational qualification and your experience that's relevant to this job. Either you do this in the introduction or throughout where you use situation. If you haven't done it, you should kind of practice that as part of your answers. You should kind of build that in. And lastly, when you are presented with a question, do you have any questions at the end of the interview? Don't ask, is this an in-person job or a remote position? Instead, use this opportunity to ask role based or any specific questions related to the role, right? You can say, hey, what does a typical day look like for someone in this role? Or what are some of the immediate challenges the team is looking to solve and how I could contribute to? You know what, if that's not good enough, you can ask some impact and performance related questions. How is the success measured in this role? If nothing else, express your gratitude for their time and the opportunity, and ask them, are there any specific tools or technologies that's commonly used in this role or in their team? And mention your eagerness to proactively familiarize and learn this yourself and these resources. Therefore, what you're saying is, behind the scene, I'm doing all this work. I'm kind of ensuring you, so I'm prepared to come and hit the ground running. That's what you're saying. But use the question wisely. You'll get to ask one question, and it's more like a formality at that point. In conclusion, be ready for a surprise question and brainstorm your thoughts as and when how you would approach the situation. Avoid giving up by saying I don't know. Instead, explain how would you approach the problem. Use the STAR method to your advantage. Be authentic in sharing your experiences. You could use appropriate tones, intonation to your benefit. The storytelling really has to come as normal as it can be. You know what? Face it. The folks on the other side of the table, they make a decision. Therefore, focus on what's in your control and do well in it. And in the end, have a meaningful question to ask and be ready. All of this, practice, practice, practice. Use your own voice recorder to hear our own self and check your confidence from time to time. Remember, every interview is a step closer to your dream job. With preparation, confidence, and practice, you're on the right path. You got this. I know you will do well.